Hello and welcome back to my writing vlog series. This is writing vlog number 37. In this one I'm going to work on my novel Project Katrina, and I'm getting close to finishing up this round of edits. This part of the writing vlog series focuses on big picture edits for this project. This is only the second project that I'm working on in writing vlogs for my YouTube channel, but there will be more to come. I hope that's the plan at least, but this project has taken some time to go through. In earlier writing vlogs I did a read-through of the entire novel and made notes for what I want to change, but I think many of those changes are smaller edits that I will need to do once I'm done with these bigger edits. And I also made notes on the big picture stuff in that part of the writing vlog series, and I'm implementing these bigger changes, or some of them at least, but I have changed my mind about other parts of the editing ideas I had when I read through it and made those comments and notes for myself for what I want to adjust in this novel so I can hopefully get it fully done at some point. This writing vlog is going to be about chapter 28 in this new version. As I have stated earlier, the old version of this novel only had 22 chapters, and so I think you know by now that I'm expanding on the novel and I'm making it longer too, but I think I also make it better. I hope that these changes I make are making this story better and not just different. I've heard somewhere that you can edit a novel, but at one point or another you will stop making improvements and you will just make it different instead. So there are only so many things you can change on your own because if you spot something that you know is wrong, then you can fix that, but there might be other things that slip by, or there might be things that you think are right but are actually wrong, but you don't see it yourself because you don't know it. So that's why it's recommended for writers to get other people to read through novels to get input on changes that can be made. But I'm hoping to make this story fully complete as it can be at this point. I'm making these bigger changes, and then I'll have to go through the novel one more time and make those smaller changes. The line edit, I think it's called. These big picture edits might change things, and as I have said before, I think I'm going to remove an entire chapter, and so it won't make much sense for me to go back to that chapter and make smaller edits if I'm just going to delete the entire chapters. So I won't go into the smaller edits at this point. I think that if there is a chapter that I know I'm going to keep, or have a strong belief that I'm going to keep, I will make smaller edits, even though I might change the story and I might delete a paragraph or something. But I think it's worth the time at this point. If there's something that I know I'm not going to keep, then I won't bother with going through that. I will have to read the entire story from start to finish in order to know what I can keep and what I have to keep and want to keep and what I can delete. I don't expect that chapter to be easily removed because there might be a few things happening. Something should happen in that chapter, but there might be something that affects the story. The chapter before leads into that, and the chapter after might reference something that happens in that chapter, and then I will need to make smaller adjustments to those chapters in order to make the story coherent. So there's a cohesion and there's coherence. I looked up the terms the other day, and as far as I know, coherence is about a text's overall connectedness. I don't know if connectedness is a word, but it is now. If I made it up, then I just hope you understand what I mean. But coherence is about the overall idea throughout the story, if it makes sense. Whereas cohesion is the connection between chapters or not chapters at large, but the text itself, or inside the text. If you go a bit deeper or a lot deeper in a text, then each sentence has to lead naturally into the next one. So there has to be cohesion between your ideas on the page from one paragraph to the next. You can skip certain ideas or skip from one location to another by making a chapter break, for example, but overall I think that a chapter inside a story should be cohesive. So there's a logical connection between chapters in a word-like sense, but also the ideas behind it. I don't know. I hope that I have understood the two terms and the differences correctly. If you're interested, you can look up coherence and cohesion yourself. As I said earlier, this writing blog is going to be about chapter 28, and it's the climax chapter. The stuff I talked about in writing blog 36 is a bit fuzzy in my head because it's been a while since I recorded it, and I haven't looked at it because I haven't gotten around to editing that yet as of this day, which is the 29th of January 2026. And that reminds me that I forgot to mention the date of recording at the beginning of the writing blog. I usually do that right away, but I have said it now. Well, for the two previous writing blogs, I'm pretty sure that I talked about getting near the ending and getting to the climax, and the old version of the story, this the version that I'm expanding upon now, didn't really have a climax before, and it needs one because I want it to be more impactful and I want it to matter to the reader. The story matters to me because I really like the story and I like the characters. And I want the readers to feel for them, for everything that has happened to them and what's going to happen later on. This climax is going to be a bit fun to write, even though something bad is going to happen, but it will be a bit hectic, I think, because there's going to be a lot of talking and a lot of emotions, and it will escalate and then it will go wrong, as I have talked about before in either the previous writing blog or the one before that. Maybe I have talked about it in both. I don't remember. It's not always easy being a writer, especially if you don't remember things that well. I remember some things pretty well, but other things slip my mind and I go like, oh, I forgot about this simple thing. But I would like to think that I can remember stuff when it's about my novels. However, I have written a bunch of novels at this point, so I have written a lot of novels that I don't really remember what they're about. The black and the white binders over there are my other novels that I have written already and have printed out. It varies a lot whether I have just printed it out and just done one quick read through to mark up small things I want to change, or whether I have been more thorough and made notes for what I want to change about it on a larger scale. But editing is not, I won't say that it's not my forte. It's something I do regularly, but maybe I'm not that good at editing my own stuff because it's dear to me. As I have talked about before, I think it was in one of my early writing blogs that there's this saying, kill your darlings, and maybe I'm not that good at it myself, because if I like a certain sentence, or if I like an idea, or if I like a character, then I want to keep it even though it might not belong in the story. I hope that I have become a bit more robust, if you can call it that, been a bit more tough, so I can weed out these things from a more objective standpoint instead of, oh, I like them, I like all of them, I want to keep it. So if it doesn't serve the story, then it should go. It needs to serve the story in one way or another, as the saying goes. I don't know if I can think of a specific example regarding this kill your darlings. Maybe I have things I tend to phrase in a certain way, but that's different. I think that's a preference for a style or the way you express yourself, and that's what I would call voice. There's this whole thing about voice. The writer has his or her own voice, but the characters in the story have their voice as well. And if you go into a deep POV, when you're really inside a character's head, then you should try to not write as you would write something, but write in a style that you feel like or think that character would express something. So there's the writer's voice, and then there's character voice. I think it's hard to distinguish, because if I write a story, for example, this story that I'm working on now, it's written from a close third perspective, and sometimes I go into the characters' heads, but when I'm just telling the story or observing the characters, and I, as the narrator, tell the story or write something, then it's my voice, but it's still influenced by my main character's voice, I think. That's a whole other discussion that I won't go into more detail with right now, but I don't know what else to talk about before I jump into this, so I will just get to work on my novel. Hopefully by the end of this writing blog, I have written a totally new chapter. I can't say that I write a new chapter 28 for the novel, because, as I have said before, this part of the story that I'm writing from scratch didn't exist before. I'm not rewriting because I skipped several plot points, and then the story needs to have this climax. There was a bit of a climax before, but it came out of the blue, and then it was just cut to the next chapter. So I think that this lead up to the climax is going to be more impactful, because we have all of this, the converge and the battle before it then goes wrong. So we'll see what's going to happen when I write this, but I'll get to work now, and then I will get back to you in a bit.
Sorry I made you believe that I really loved you. I don't wanna relive, I don't wish you do. Feeling so meek and small, looking at your picture on my wall. I'm sorry, I let it slip away. You didn't hurt me, but I couldn't bear to let you stay. I was supposed to treat you good, but you let me fool you around, and I did when I could, but you didn't make a sound. You say that you still love me, and I also like you, but baby, we can't be, so baby, we're through. I've brought you enough pain, don't you see I would hurt you again? I'm sorry, I let it slip away. You didn't hurt me, but I couldn't bear to let you stay. I was supposed to treat you good, but you'd let me fool you around, and I did when I could, but you didn't make a sound. On the outside you don't seem to be sad, but I know your feelings deep inside. I know I can't be the greatest love you've ever had. Baby, you should know there are things you can't hide. I can see it in your eyes. I pretended to sleep one night, and I heard you cry, but I don't deny it. You're too sweet and great to be told more lies. I'm sorry, You didn't hurt me, but I couldn't bear to let you stay. I was supposed to treat you good, but you let me fool you around, and I did when I could. But you didn't make a sound. I'm sorry, I let it slip away. You didn't hurt me, but I couldn't bear to let you stay. I was supposed to treat you good, but you let me fool you around, and I did when I could. But you didn't make a sound. I regret I treated you so bad. Baby, you're allowed to be sad, and you have reasons to be mad. There'll come another to make you glad. And I have reasons to be sorry. Sorry. Can you really forgive me? Give me. I want you to swear it. Swear it. Or I don't wanna hear it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let it slip away. Let it slip away. You didn't hurt me, but I couldn't bear to let you stay. I couldn't bear to let you stay. I was supposed to treat you good, but you let me fool you around, and I did when I could. But you didn't make a sound.
Hello again. It's about 2 hours later, and I'm now done writing chapter 28. The scene that I had in mind for this climax unfolded a bit differently than what I had in mind. When I wrote the scene, I added a bit more to the beginning to kind of not ramp it up, but to get us into the story. We're in the story already, of course, but I wanted to have some kind of momentum to build up to what's coming later in the chapter. The chapter ended up being 3,690 words approximately, so that's a decent number of words for a chapter. I think it fits in well with the length of the other ones, at least as far as I can remember. The number of words per chapter varies a bit, but overall I think it's about average. But in this chapter I have this climax, and I actually added another reveal that I hadn't planned on revealing. There's a revelation about my main character, and there's also a revelation about Charlie. But there's an additional reveal regarding my main character that I hadn't planned on including in this chapter, but it actually makes it more impactful, I hope, and think. It's something more that they can have a bit of a banter about, and it's something more that this other dangerous or potentially dangerous character can comment on. And I actually ended up having an additional reveal. I don't think I had planned on mentioning that part. It's about this mysterious character that only appears sometimes, and what he represents. It's a bit strange when I don't go into detail with it, but it's something that he has to. It's his part of the story, so to speak, that she blurts out, and she wasn't intended to talk about that, but she spills it when they're heated and they're having this argument with this potentially dangerous character. She slips up and she tells him, this dangerous person, something about herself, and she also accidentally slips up, or it's rather him, Charlie, who slips up and tells this other character something about himself. That's a bit cryptic, but Charlie tells this other character something about Charlie. So it's not he doesn't tell the other character something about him, but himself. It's a funny thing with grammar and coherence and meaning and stuff like that, because in Danish we have a distinction between character A, for example, talking to someone else about A. So A talks to B about A, and if you say that in Danish, I think it would become that he tells the other character about himself, but him would be sig in Danish, and in English we only have him, so it's him whether it's A or it's B that A is talking about. So it's a bit confusing. It's confusing to me at least whether you have to say him or the other kind of him. In Danish it's confusing as well. I think it comes down to who the agent of the sentence is. If A tells B something about A, then it's sig, I think. But it's a bit cryptic and strange. But yes, that was a side note. I have already mentioned the number of words for this chapter, but I think it actually ended up being a bit longer than I had expected because I have additional reveals, and I also wanted to move my characters from the field where they played football, and then they are having this heated argument with this other character, and then they walk away from that character, and then later on they will get confronted again because of this character who can't process or can't handle what he has been told. So it's actually a bit sad for him to have all of this revealed and being bombarded with these things in the novel that he didn't expect. They tell him everything and they state, oh, it's the truth, and he doesn't believe them, and he's like, oh, and you want me to believe this? But he, instead of being angry that they are gay, I don't think you can call it that he internalizes it instead, but he gets less angry and just confused and baffled and just, oh, okay, then, but I don't believe it. I have my main character reflect on this, and as they're walking away from him, my main character, Katrina, thinks about him, and it must have been a shock for him to hear all of this, but he might be confused and he might be in shock, but at least he got less angry and then wasn't a threat anymore. But then when they walk away, he wants to confront them again because he has had a bit of time to reflect on this and he is not ready or willing to let it go, unfortunately. So this chapter is pretty long, but it's not that long. But combined with all of the other chapters I have, including my outline bits, the novel is almost at 120,000 words now. When I subtract the chapter that I'm going to delete and when I subtract the sections with the outline, then I think I'll get down to about 115,000 words maybe. I think it's around that number. I'm not sure. Maybe there might be other things that I'm just going to delete outright, but I've got a plan of adding something to the last chapter. In writing vlog number 38, I'm going to work on the last chapter of this novel, and I think I'm going to do all of that chapter in one writing vlog, even though I'm going to split it, I think. I have this idea that I'm going to add something to it, and that will make it longer, but I hope and think that I'll be able to find a natural place to split it, hopefully around the middle of that chapter, so I will end up with a total of 30 chapters. I usually tend to land at about 30 chapters per novel because I follow this 27 chapter outlines and because I have a tendency to add stuff on, and maybe sometimes I might combine plot points, but I think I add extra stuff to a plot point so it spans over 2 chapters in some cases. So in total, I usually go a bit above 27 chapters, even though I think that you're supposed to have 27 chapters when you follow that plot point outline method or whatever it's called. If you follow that and you have 1 chapter per plot point, then the story might be a bit strange. It all comes down to whether that structure actually fits your novel, and I think the structure fits my novel. I have just tweaked a few things, and as I have said before, I think I have combined plot points, and in other cases I might have expanded a plot point. For example, the lead up to the climax, and then the climax itself. The battle is another plot point, but I think I had that before, but then there's the lead up to the climax and the climax. I'm not sure. Sometimes I wonder whether something is categorized as one plot point or something else. If I'm not fully sure about the story's structure, then I might get confused and think that one event in my story is one plot point, but in actuality it's something else. But I think overall it follows the structure and it makes sense as it is now, I think. I just need to do the last chapter, and as I said before, that will be writing block 38. I'm almost done with this novel, and as I said in the writing block before this, or the previous one, I'm so close to the finish line now that I can breathe with relief and be thankful for the process and what I have added to the story along the way. Hopefully I am making the story better and not just making it different. I think that when I come down to doing the line edits, then it's at some point it will be about making it sound different and not making the story better. If it's only one line or one sentence that doesn't seem quite right, then I can live with that. I'm more concerned with the overall story, and as long as each sentence makes sense and is well written, then I'm not that concerned with whether I use the exact right word or if I phrase it in a poetic way or if it's just straight to the point. As a general rule, I don't think I use this purple prose because I want the text to be clear and not have the reader go, what is this actually about? Because the way something is phrased is very cryptic and the meaning is unclear. It can be a choice that you make. If you want to have something be ambiguous, then you can phrase a sentence in a way that can be interpreted in different ways, and then that's the meaning of that. But as a starting point, I want all of my sentences to be clear and not necessarily concise because I want the text to flow. It's also a good idea to vary the sentence length so that there's a rhythm in the text. So one sentence is very short and snappy and words are omitted in the sentence, but it still makes sense. And then other sentences are long and very complex. A complex idea can be written in a very short and precise way, or it can be a bit convoluted with these extra sentences. For example, things in parentheses or things with dashes and add-ons in the sentence. So I don't think that the readability score, in Danish we call it likstal. I'm not sure what it's called in English. Maybe flash reading score, readability something score. But there are tools online, I guess, where you can put your text in and then see how hard something is to read, and the longer your sentences are and the more complex words you use, and if you use all of these, I can't remember what it's called in English, but if you have a sentence but then you have an extra idea and then put that in but put commas around it, then you have this extra sentence in the sentence. So those things make the text harder to read and understand. But I don't want my readability scores or whatever it is to be high. I want it to be medium so it can be read by most people. I'm not writing for children generally, because I don't think that I write children's books, even though some of my characters are pretty young. but that's another discussion. I'm not quite sure what the target audience is for this novel, but in terms of the age group of the people that I imagine will be interested in this story, the age group for that is young adults and adults. So everyone from teens and up, I think. I don't think that children would be interested in the story because of the themes and the events in it, but also because of the ages of my characters. I think it can be read by young teens as well, but not by children. Very young children are probably better off reading children's books that are written for them as the intended audience. I have written an entire chapter today, and it took a bit of time to get the words down, but I'm a fast writer. I hope that my texts aren't worse because I write fast. I watched someone else's video. I was surprised to hear that she handwrites her novel because she wants to take the time to think about each word when she writes it. So maybe the hope is, or the idea is, that the text she will get out of that is better quality than if she just wrote something fast on a computer. But I hope that what I write is good even though I write fast. I have an idea and I can kind of hear the story in my head, and then I just write what I hear, and it kind of unfolds naturally, I think. And I hope that it flows and makes sense once it's out on paper or on my screen. I'm actually very fond of Word as a word processing tool because it's a lot easier to work with, easier and faster, and it's more manageable. Once, when I lived at home, we didn't have a computer, and so many of the lyrics I wrote and some of the short stories, I think, I wrote those on a typewriter, and it's very tough on your fingertips, but it also took time to sit there and type the words because you have to type pretty hard to make the, I don't know what to call them, the sticks or whatever, the middle bars to go up and hit the paper and then stamp each letter onto the page. And so if you made a mistake, you had to use a special kind of tape to put into the machine and then type on top of that to kind of make the mistake go away, but you could still see there was something there. And you couldn't just take out a section and move it around and then make bigger edits. You could fix typos with that correction tape or whatever it's called. But you had to switch that in or put that in, and then it wasn't very easy to work with. Later on, I actually bought an electronic typewriter. And so I could write a sentence, I could write a few words directly on the device, and then I could see it on a small LCD screen. If it was okay, I could just press a button or something, and then it would type that onto the paper, so I could write something and then fix mistakes before it printed it. I don't have that anymore. And I don't have a typewriter anymore either, but the old-fashioned typewriter was my parents', and the electronic one was, I think it was something that I bought with my dad, but it was mostly me who used it. I think that my dad might still have that, but I have no desire of going back to working on that. I like my computer, and I like the fact that I can just jump into a Word document and then brain dump or make notes or whatever, and then it sits on my computer in a file, and then I can look at it if I want to, instead of having to write on a machine and then have it be printed on a piece of paper and then have a lot of papers lying around and no structure, and where is the piece of paper with notes that I need. But yes, that was another side note. I hope you enjoyed getting a peek or a glimpse of my writing world, and even though this is an editing phase, I haven't really shown you how I actually do the edits. Previously I have talked about the kinds of mistakes that I have come across, that I have made, something about POV switches or maybe a change in the tense of a sentence or something like that. I have talked about specific edits I have done, but I haven't shown them. I just talk about the project on a large scale, and I might here or there comment on mistakes that I have fixed. But since this is primarily about the bigger changes, the bigger edits I'm doing, then it's more general. I hope that it's okay that I just tell you what I have done and what I'm going to do. Some of these minor changes, even though deleting an entire chapter isn't a minor thing, then I consider it minor because it's something that I considered doing when I was at that point, but I decided to leave it in. And once I do the reread, I can make a final decision whether it needs to stay or go. But yes, I think this writing vlog is going to end up a bit long because this part of the video is almost 25 minutes long, and I have the section of me writing on the novel as well, plus the introduction, which is also a bit long. But I hope I can get the video down to between 30 and 40 minutes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll watch the next one. As I have said, it's going to be about the final chapter, and whether I split that chapter in two or not, it's going to be one writing vlog. So my plan that I would end up doing writing vlog number 38 when I finish up this part of the editing process is going to be true, I think. I wasn't really sure if it was going to be one more or one less, but yes, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you will watch the next writing vlog. Until then, take care. Thank you for watching.